Hey, welcome to another tutorial using Solidworks. I'm Scott, and I just wanted to go through the Revolve Base or the Revolve Boss tool. It basically allows you to extrude things on a cylindrical path or on an axis. If you think about like a baseball bat, it kind of has a central axis and it has this sketch that's revolved about the center. So today we're going to get into that a little bit. We'll be designing another ant feeder for the ant farms. I promise no more ant videos after this. Potentially, this was requested on the Facebook group. So let's start by making a part. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly to get us up to the point of using Revolve. And I have the parameters of the test tube, or the specifications here. And basically what I'm looking for mainly is the outer diameter, because that's what it's going to plug into on our base. So the outer diameter is 12 millimeters. I'm going to start with a sketch and just draw here a straight line up and down. This is going to be the axis it revolves about. I'll draw a line there. And I want to, that's going to be the center. So the diameter is 12 millimeters. So I need to go from here to here and put in 6, which is half of 12. And I'm gonna offset this line here to give the actually no, I'll use the shell tool to shell out that test tube. And this arc's not gonna be exactly right. I'm just kind of visually using this in place when I design the other part so I can make sure they fit together. So you have your kind of cross-sectional quarter view of this part, and what you can do is after you draw your sketch, we'll just define this really quick so we don't have any blue in our sketches. Make sure everything's defined. Exit the sketch, and we're going to choose Revolved Boss. While that sketch is highlighted, it's going to ask us what the axis of revolution is, or axis of rotation. We're going to pick this line here, and right when you pick that line, you can see already what it's going to do. It gives you some other options here, thin features. So if I want to make the thickness 1 millimeter, actually it's not going to work in this case because I would have to draw, actually I can delete off this line here. Bring my errors over so you can see them. I actually don't want to delete the whole sketch. I want to come over here, edit the sketch, delete this feature off. I'm going to make this a construction line. So if you click on something, left click, you can make it a construction line and it won't try to extrude it or use it as a feature. It's just there kind of to hold the space for the dimension. So I called out the dimension on the construction line. So it's holding that position and it won't interfere with the actual sketches that are going to do the extruding. So I'm going to do the revolve again. It says a sketch is currently open, meaning this is not closed. A non-thin revolution feature requires a closed sketch. Would you like the sketch to be automatically closed? I'm going to say no because I want it to be a thin feature. See, you can see here that I'm going to make the wall thickness 1 millimeter, or I can make it like 0.05 millimeters, just really thin. The glass is probably fairly thin on this test tube. So it's just another trick of skipping one step. The other way we could have done it, and I'll show you that really quick, was closing out this sketch. Let me delete off this revolve, and we'll let it close it like it was trying to do. Sorry, I'm clicking around like a nut. Revolve sketch. Okay, it says it's open. This time we're going to hit yes. So when we hit yes, it's going to ask us what the revolution. I got to close it off. Hold on. What are you doing, crazy sketch? Delete that. We're going to come over here, draw a line here. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Revolve, choose that sketch, hit yes, I'd like to close it. It's going to close that up and do the same thing there, except now we're going to have to shell this. So if you come up to your features, you go to shell, you're going to click on the top here, and you're going to say it's a millimeter shell thickness. And you're going to hit the checkbox, and there it is, or 0.5 millimeter. So you can right click on this feature, click on that little modification, and just do 0.5 millimeters. So, you know, there's multiple ways to get to the final thing that you want to do in SolidWorks many a times. So we're going to save this, and we're just going to call it, we'll call it part 1 on the desktop. This is the worst place to save things. You can see I have all these junk folders and whatnot. So I'm just going to save it here, part 1, hit save. So the next step is we're going to do a new part, and we're also going to use the Revolve again. And the trick to this is you always want to think of the object like a cross section of the object, and we're only going to draw half of it because we have to spin that shape around. And you don't have to draw in the center. Like if you want a hole in the center of this thing, you can start drawing over here out in space, and it'll revolve it around that and leave the center totally open. But for this ant feeder, we want to make a hole for the test tube. We want to make a wall thickness for where that test tube is going to hold. We're going to also come down and make a little trough for the ants to come get the whatever they put in here. And I want to make a little ramp for them to crawl up because I'm a nice guy and I don't want them to work too hard. And this whole thing will be closed off. So this is the base, and right there we're going to close that sketch. So we're going to define some of these dimensions. So I have D as my dimensioning tool, and then it brings up the little dimensioning arrows, which is smart dimension. You can also get to it up here. It also shows smart dimension D shortcut, but you can get it up. You can get to it. Excuse me. You can get to it up here. And there's also different dimensions if you want to do a horizontal dimension, a vertical dimension. Smart dimension just guesses for you. We're going to do smart dimension D. I'm going to click on it. We're going to say that's, remember you're doing half of it. So if I want it to be like 50 millimeters total or 75 millimeters total, I'm going to use half of that. So I'll do like 75 divided by 2, make it about 3 inches wide. This thickness, I want to probably do about 1/8 of an inch. I'm in millimeters, designing in millimeters, but I can easily, you know, type in 1/8 and then inches there, and it'll convert it for me. If I want to quit working in millimeters in this part, I can come down here and change the units to inches. It'll close off the sketch. You have to reopen it, and then now you're in inches. Sometimes it's easier to work in inches, depending on if you're used to it. I can work in both. I mean, so I'm used to working in either. That's an amazing skill to have. You guys should get that skill set. All right, there we go. So I'm gonna make that 3/8 thick. I'm gonna make this, basically, this is where the test tube goes in, so it needs to be 6 millimeters to give me a 12 millimeter diameter. And we'll give it a little bit of play in there. So I'm going to do that in thousandths because I can think a tolerance is better in thousandths. So I'm going to give it about 5 thousandths total. So I'm going to about 2.5 thousandths on each side. So I just opened this up a little bit so that test tube could fit in there easier. I want about maybe 3/4 of an inch grab on that test tube. So that's the height there. And the wall thickness, maybe like 0.125. It doesn't need to be that thick. It'll be fairly strong. And also the trough, I want that maybe about 1/2 inch. And this final dimension, I want this height to be higher than this lowest point because I'm going to put a little slot here, and you guys will see that later. But I want this height to be a little higher than that. Actually, probably I'm going to make this fairly high so there's no risk of the liquids falling out. And thinking about this real quick, I don't want the ants to fall in here and like drown, because right now this dimension, oop, wrong button, this dimension is 3/8 of an inch. That's kind of deep, so I'll probably want to slope this up so I can turn off that diagonal. I can rotate this guy locked somewhere. So one of my constraints is set here. My distance is set, so it won't let me change that because the line to that is set to that. So I'm going to delete that distance relationship. Now I can move this, and what I'll do is I'll just I'm going to slope this up. So if the ants fall down, I'm going to do it like to there. I can trim this. It's going to give me some errors. I'm just going to put my new dimensions in there. See if that was a good idea here in a minute. So what we're going to do is use the Revolve. And it's going to ask me what the axis of revolution is. I'm going to click this, and it's going to create this base here. I'm going to hit the check mark, and it basically revolves around that center. This will be the feeding area. Now what I need to do is create slots in here that will feed the liquid down to here. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. I think what I'm going to do for this video is a fairly simple method of just picking the plane here and cutting out a slot down to here. So if I do an extruded cut on this plane, I'm going to sketch, and I basically just want to take, I'll start in the center, and I'll go out to this box, and I'll also draw a circle around here, and I'll also draw another box. I know this looks like chaos, but what we're going to do now is start defining some things. So this is going to be a 1/4 inch wide. This is going to be a 1/4 inch wide. This circle we want concentric with this one. Sorry, co-radial, so it's going to be on the same radius. And then if I hit the T key, I have trim set up. I like trim to closest. Power trim, you can kind of like draw the line and it'll delete off certain things. Trim the closest, you can kind of click the items you don't want. So I'm going to trim out everything basically. So when I extrude this out, I'm going to get a, oh, and I trimmed a dimension where I was, yeah, see my dimensions got lost because I trimmed it. I need to actually dimension these points. I'm getting an error. Oh, because it's defined over here. Hold on. So I always move things and see where things are going nuts, and that kind of helps you see where you need to fix your issues. And there should be one more problem here. I'll just make this vertical to that, and I'll make this horizontal to that, and there we go. All right, so we're going to extrude that, and it's saying it's an open sketch, so I'm going to pick what is going on here. So I got an open sketch. There it is. This guy, your trouble. This guy, all these trouble points. So that's what I want right there. So I want to extrude this down, and I'm going to go up to a vertex, and it should let me, I'm sorry, up to a surface, and I don't know if it'll let me pick that. No, it won't let me pick that, so I'm going to offset it from the base surface, and I'm going to go 0.125 because I know that's the thickness of the base, and there you go. So when you plug in that test tube, it'll stop here on this surface, and it'll let the liquid kind of drain into this pond. I probably want to make that not as deep. So really what I need to do is make the test tube go further down. So I'll go like 0.25. And I want to move this to this point, and to do that I need to extrude this original revolve. I need to go further down. So I'll come back to here and I'll look at this, and I need to go down basically to the base. So when I'll give myself a little room so that liquid can come out. Oh, error. So let's edit this sketch, plane sketch. So if we edit this, kind of see what's going on. Okay, I don't know why it's erroring out. The end face cannot be determined. Okay, it's because I deleted the face that it was referencing. So I want to offset from surface, and I want to pick the base surface again. And I want to offset, I want this sketch. So where are you at there, brother? Oh, okay, I was going too far. There wasn't enough. There we go. Man, I'm not on it tonight. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Much better. So what'll happen is your test tube will plug into there, which we'll see in 1 second. And it'll kind of fill up this bowl and allow the ants to feed. So I'm going to save this as part 3. And I have part 1 open. I have part 3 open. So now I'm going to go to new and make an assembly. I'm going to bring in part 1, bring in part 3. And this will kind of cover assemblies really quickly. When you bring in your first part, it's always fixed, meaning you can't move it. It's locked. So to unlock it, you can right click and float it. And now it's free to spin and be moved. So left click drag does that, right click drag spins it around. Same with this, they're both free. What I usually do is I'll start with one of my objects, usually kind of like the main object of my assembly, and work around that. So I like to fix this guy. You know, I want to fix that to the top plane, so I pick this surface and hit M for mate. You can also get the mates up here. There's the mate button, and in the mate options you have all kinds of different tools you can use, including advanced mates, mechanical mates. Most of the stuff you'll be doing, you can just click the surface, click the next surface. It's going to guess what you want. In this case it didn't because I was in advanced mates, but I'll show you on the next one. So I did that, it's concentric, but I want to flip it. So see how it made it that way. I actually want it that way. And then I'm going to click the check mark. And what's cool in assembly is I can double click this and make this longer right here. So if I want to do 1.5 inches, I can hit that, hit rebuild up here, and it makes it 1.5 inches long. You can see this is still moving in space, so I want to lock that down. So I'm going to pick front plane, hold control, left click on it, and then left click on front plane up here. I'm going to mate those together, and you can see it moved over there, coincide. And then the same thing, now I'm locked in space on the top here and the front, but the right plane is still free to move. So I'm going to left click that, hold control, left click the right plane here, mate, or I have the M key shortcutted to mate. So you'll also see now that this component doesn't have this parentheses dash, which means it's not defined. Basically, it's free floating and it's not fully defined in space. Like this right now, I can still move up and down. I can actually spin this. You can't really see in this item, but it's spinning. So what I need to do is I'm going to click this face. Click that face. I'm going to come down here, click the surface it's going to sit on. I'm holding control to hold both faces, and then hit M key and it mates it there. And it's still going to be not fully defined because it's a cylindrical object and it's spinning. So if I come in here and choose this front face on it, you can see it highlights it, and just choose this front face here, hit mate, it's going to rotate that to sync them up. And that's basically it. That's your, this is probably more like 3 inches. That's going to be the new ant farm feeder I'm going to put on the website. I'll probably add a few things like coming in and cleaning up some of the edges on this object, but you can check it out. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you come back to learn more. Thank you very much.